This presentation is going to examine how to be an effective note-taker. So why is it important to have effective note-taking skills? An effective note-taker develops skills that enables them to take useful notes. Useful notes then help to build meaningful connections between topics, and meaningful connections lead to a more comprehensive understanding of the course material. There are different strategies that can be used to help you become a better note-taker. Let's look at some tips and techniques that you can use to start taking better, more effective notes in class. There are 3 important steps to effective note-taking: observation, recording, and reviewing. Your observations will determine what you record, and your recording will determine what you review. Step 1 is all about observation. This includes setting the stage, being present in class, and watching for clues. Setting the stage is all about what you can do prior to class to make the most of your note-taking time. You must be able to focus on the material being presented. Actively think about what you are hearing so that you can make choices about what to write down in your notes. And pay attention. The #1 rule to being a good note-taker is to pay attention to everything that is said and everything that is written down. So how do we set the stage for taking good notes? First, complete any outside assignments. Prior knowledge of the material will prime you to pay closer attention. Do the readings prior to class, have a look at the assignment questions. Any previous exposure will help you to concentrate. You will have a better understanding of what the instructor is talking about. Bring any necessary materials. Come prepared. It's better to be looking at it than for it. Have everything ready on your desk: pens, pencil, paper, eraser, calculator. You have a much better chance of being engaged if you're not looking for things. Be mindful of the classroom atmosphere. Bring a coat in case you get cold. Sit by the window if you need natural light. Sometimes your physical environment can be a distraction. Sit front and center. It is true that we can pay better attention if we are at the front of the class. There are less distractions. It's harder to fall asleep. It's easier to see the board. It's easier to hear the instructor. You are less likely to lose your concentration. Review before class begins. Take a brief look at the notes from the last class. This will help you to focus on connections to the material. It can take up to 10 minutes to get involved in the topic at hand. Any prior review can put you in the right headspace to be immediately actively engaged with your instructor. And lastly, clarify your intentions. Our attitudes about being in class will greatly affect how successful we will be. Always stay positive. Being a good observer means to be here and now in class. That means to be present. Accept your wandering mind. We all daydream. When you catch yourself not paying attention, what you should do is sit up straight, return to task, notice what's going on around you. Every time you do this, you strengthen your observer consciousness. Be an active listener. Pay attention. Watch the instructor. Make eye contact. Try to be in the moment. Notice your environment. When you drift off and come back to the moment, be aware of what the room feels like, what the instructor is saying, the feel of your pen. This will help to redirect your focus. Postpone debate. Sometimes we disagree or we are unsure of what the instructor is talking about, but just make sure that you don't fixate on it. You will miss what's going on. Avoid judging lecture styles. Every instructor has a different lecture style. Focus on the content and not the delivery. Participate in class activities. Ask questions. Volunteer in class. You will remember better the more you are involved. Make connections to previous notes. Everything you learn in class is related, so pay attention. It's related to what you learned yesterday, and it will be related to what you will learn tomorrow. And stay organized. Try to be neat and organized while taking notes in class. This will minimize the amount of time you have to spend later trying to fix your notes. This will be beneficial when it comes time for review. And the last step to being a good observer is to watch for clues. There are many things that you will see in class that should indicate that something important is being said. First, be alert to repetition. This signals that the information is important. Listen for introductory, concluding, and transition phrases. Things like the following, most importantly, on the other hand. These phrases signal relationships or changes to new topics. Watch the board. If the instructor writes it down, you should write it down. Be selective. Watch the instructor's movements. If the instructor looks at or reads from their notes, or if they suddenly put up a slide, it's probably important information. If they make the effort to present it, you should make the effort to write it down. Don't ignore obvious clues. The instructor may tell you it's on the test, so mark something in the margin that you understand that you need to study that for the test. And pay attention to the instructor's enthusiasm. Watch for visual and nonverbal cues, signals that indicate that something important is being said. If the instructor is excited about it, there's a good chance it might be on the exam. The second step to good note-taking is recording. How you record your notes in class will determine how organized you are when it comes time to study for an exam. There is no right or wrong way to take notes during lectures, but there are a few methods that can help you stay more organized. The method by which you take your notes can also affect how successful you are at recalling the material. It is much more useful to take notes using longhand versus a laptop. The process of handwriting notes engages the brain differently than typing on a computer. It also assists with better recall and understanding because you have taken more of an active role with the material. Here we will look at the CORNELL format of note-taking, creating mind maps, and basic outlining forms of note-taking. The first method we're going to look at is called the CORNELL format. As you can see, the CORNELL method is based primarily on how you structure your page. First, draw a line down the left side of the page approximately 2.5 inches from the edge of the page. This is the recall column. You will record your class notes to the right in the notes column. Record any keywords, cues, and sample questions in the left hand in the recall column. This side will be used in step 3 for review. Use indentation below the beginning of a topic or detail area that continues for more than one line to show that the area is related. Skip lines to show that changes of ideas are happening. For major changes, leave a larger space. And finally, summarize the main ideas at the bottom of the page during your review. It's important to use different colors as well, especially when you're writing your own material into the notes from class. Always use a different color for anything that you've added so that you can tell when you're reviewing the information that was from you and what was from the instructor. Now let's look at how to build a mind map. What you will do is start by writing the main subject in the middle of the page. You will record subtopics on lines branching out from the main topic, and each branch may have its own branches. Use boxes and arrows to show any relationships between the branches. Use different colors to add interest. This will help you when you are actively trying to learn the material. Mind maps can be used in conjunction with any type of note-taking. Use it after class to organize and summarize your notes into interesting and easy-to-follow graphics that you can study from. Mind maps are not something that you will attempt during class, but rather something that you will use after class as an adjunct to your notes. The last method we'll look at is the outline format. This method is probably the most familiar as it is similar to how most students approach note-taking. It allows you to keep your notes visually organized. You can use bullets, arrows, or numbers to indicate the transition to a new topic or thought. Every new subject starts at the far left side of the page. Write each related detail below the subject in a staggered fashion so that the related material is obvious to the reader. Make sure you leave white space between new topics. And this method allows you to visually recognize relationships between different subjects. The last step to effective note-taking is reviewing. Good notes are useful, but the key is ideally what happens after class. Reviewing is an important step in the learning process. You must do review immediately after class, or as close to class time as you can possibly fit it into your schedule. 5 to 10 minutes of review immediately after class gives you the opportunity to fill in what you missed and clarify anything that might be unclear. Why is this helpful? Immediate review begins the process of moving the material from short-term to long-term memory. Effective learning requires regular review of your class notes. How you choose to review those notes will impact the depth of your understanding of the material. It is not enough to simply do a cursory review of the notes, but you should approach your review session as an opportunity to make your notes as comprehensive as possible. Why is this important? When it's time to review, your notes will be complete, accurate, and readily available for you to pick up and start studying. Study time should be used for studying, not backtracking and trying to fill in lost or missing information. The more work you do with your notes immediately after taking them, the less work you will have to do later to try and organize your study material. Let's look at the important steps involved in taking good notes and some habits of successful note takers. Now let's look at the important steps for effective review. First, review within 24 hours. In this step, you are only reviewing the notes from the last class, and it may only take you 10 or 15 minutes, but it is very valuable and can save you hours of review later. It is thought that 24 hours after learning, most students are unable to recall even 20% of the content unless they have actively reviewed the material. Edit your notes during this first review. This means to fix illegible words, correct spelling mistakes, and fill in any information you have missed. Fill in keywords in the left-hand column. This will speed up your review later and gives you an immediate view of how many different topics are on that page. Organize your notes with graphic signals. This means arrows, brackets, circling related concepts, using highlighters to organize different topics and thoughts. Tidy things up. You may not have had time to do this in class. Conduct weekly reviews. Even 20 minutes is valuable. Here you will try to review all of your notes. Every time you review, you are increasing the amount of information that goes into long-term memory, and each review will take less time. Use your key words as cues to recite. These are the key words that you wrote on the left-hand side of the page. What you can do is cover up the right-hand side of your notes and use the keywords on the left side to recite as much information as possible, and then check to see if you missed any important points. This is also where you will create those mind maps. This is a great way to make connections between topics. Everything you do that deviates from your normal routine activates your brain differently and sets in motion the transfer of material from short-term to long-term memory. And last, but possibly most important, is to conduct pre-class reviews. This is for the next lecture period. Do those readings that have been assigned. Make some brief notes from the readings or a list of key concepts and terms that you should be looking for in class. This recognition will help you to be a more active listener. Here you may want to make brief notes from the readings. These will act as a guide to follow during the next lecture. Now let's look at some secrets of successful note takers. Use keywords. One key word can initiate recall of a cluster of ideas. They will trigger your memory. Use pictures and diagrams. Diagrams are a good visual to relate material in a more obvious fashion. If the instructor writes it down, so should you. If your instructor has made a special effort to write down an idea or put a slide up on the board, there is a good chance it will show up on an exam. If you're trying to be selective about what you're writing down, pay attention to what the instructor puts up in front of the class. Use a 3-ring binder. This allows you to insert any handouts in the appropriate sections, insert your own class notes or any notes you made from the text, and when it's time to study, you can remove your notes and spread them out when you're reviewing. Use only one side of the paper. This allows you to review and organize by spreading your notes out. You're not flipping pages back and forth and trying to figure out what side goes with what. You can also use the blank side of the page if you need to add material. Use 3x5 cards for summarizing notes. This is definitely more something you do when you're studying rather than when you're in class. You're writing a new concept on each card, and these cards can be organized into bundles of related material that can be used to study. Flashcards are awesome study tools. Keep your own thoughts separate. You might confuse those with what your instructor has said. And remember from previous, try to keep your own thoughts in a different color of ink, and that way you know what the instructor said and what you added in on your own. Label, number, and date all of your notes. This is important because if you take them out of your binder and you mess them up, you don't know what order they were supposed to go back in. It just allows you to keep on track, keep everything in order. Use standard abbreviations. Come up with your own. Use things that you're comfortable with, things that you've seen, but these types of things will help you with shorthand and speed up note-taking. Use a lost signal. By putting a question mark on the left-hand side of the page, it's an indicator to you after class that you need to get clarification of some topic. If you have no lost signal, you might not remember or even realize that you missed something. Use the white space. Don't be afraid to leave lots of white space between ideas when writing notes in class. When there is too much crammed on the page, that can affect you when it comes time to study. Avoid taping lectures for later. Tapes are very time-consuming to review. If you are taping, we often will relax too much during the lecture and may not pay attention. Let's face it, we're all procrastinators at some point, and you have to ask yourself, will I really go back and listen to hours of lecture after the fact? Use graphic signals. Much like the question mark in the previous page, we're looking at things like brackets to group information, arrows to make connections, any kind of graphic signal. Put a big T with a circle around it if the instructor said it's on the test. That way you know for sure that that's something you have to look at. Any signal in the margin allows you to move on and address the issue after class, if need be. Use complete sentences if necessary. Sometimes slight word changes can alter the meaning, so make sure that you're getting things down properly. Write clearly and correct spelling mistakes after class. If you're unsure, don't focus on it during class, because you might miss what the instructor is saying. Just go back later when you're doing your review and make those corrections. When in doubt, write it down. If you didn't need it, there's no harm in having it written down, but you cannot recover material that you never recorded in the first place. Write important dates at the top of the page. Sometimes an instructor will give you a reminder that there's an exam coming up, or you have a paper or a lab due. Even though you may have it in your day timer, every reminder is a valuable one. Print off lecture notes before class. If your instructor shares class notes or PowerPoints, print them and bring them to class. Half the work is already done for you, and now you can concentrate on what is being taught. Don't check out until class is over. At the end of class, it's often rushed. We try to pack up, we're looking at the clock. The information being presented is just as important as the information from the beginning of the class. Staring at the clock will not make it go faster. And use recorded online lectures to fill in notes. If your lecture is accessible online, use these recordings to only help fill in what you might have missed. Don't rely on them to do it later, because for some of us, later never comes. So let's wrap up with some final thoughts on effective note-taking. Writing notes will help you to remember what you heard. Remember, good note-taking skills are an integral step to student success. Taking notes helps you to concentrate and be a more effective listener. Active listening is the key foundation to good note-taking. Deciding what to put in your notes will increase your understanding. Being engaged and attentive are important precursors to being selective about what you are writing down. Class notes are your best record of key information. What you hear in class is an indication of what's important and what is likely to be on an exam. And finally, good notes are your best resource for exam preparation. It's your first step to successfully learning the material.